Auld Lang Syne, one of the most famous songs in the world, certainly the greatest song of friendship ever written, and written by the Bard of Friendship, Robert Burns. And friendship is a theme to which I shall return later. Friends of the Poet, I am indeed the immediate past president of the Robert Burns World Federation, a truly worldwide organisation formed to memorialise my great hero, Robert Burns. And so, before beginning my toast, I should perhaps tell you a little bit about the role of RBWF President and explain some of the experiences I had in the job. I was actually elected to the post a few years back with a very sizable majority, and it seemed that I had the support of many people from far and wide. However, it was not all plain sailing, and in fact my predecessor in the post was a constant thorn in my flesh, embarrassing the cause and constantly attempting to undermine me. Worse still, there was a significant and influential cabal in London who did the same, and it all came to a head last February when I was forced to resign. Sorry, there's a mistake here. I see what I've done. This is not my first page. I must have picked up wee Nicholas' speech from the other day. John has been determined that this event is fair and representative of a cross-section of Scottish society, to the extent that he actually invited Mrs. Sturgeon here tonight to reply to the toast of the lassies. No, seriously, she almost accepted, but she declined due to the fact that it appears that tomorrow, to coincide with the whole Burns Day thing, the first volume of her memoirs is about to be released. Now, the content of this book is a closely guarded secret. Even the title is unknown, but my money is on the bookie's favourite, Mein Campervan. Now, of course, if it doesn't come out next week, then the next big Scottish event that it will have to tie in with will be Tartan Day. So I'm afraid it may have to be parked until the 6th of April, probably in our mother-in-law's driveway. So, Mr. President, past presidents, distinguished guests, Burns aficionados, first-time visitors, multiple-time visitors, hangers-on, friends, my lords, ladies and gentlemen, and anyone else from the other 73 identifiable genders. Good evening! And thank you for a very kind invitation to join you here tonight. Now, some have accused him of being a philanderer, and a heavy drinker, a womanizer, and a devotee of debauchery. But, despite all this, Andy Monaghan is still a past president. And so, Mr. Chairman, thank you for that introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure you realise that a well-researched and erudite introduction always sets up a speech well. And in all my years of Burns speaking, I have heard some really superb, polished and knowledgeable chairmen who can really control and work an audience. Very possibly John has also heard people like that. You'd never know it. So thank you, John, for that introduction, which is definitely thy most recent. Now, there stands before you a deeply worried man. This is the first time, and after hearing this speech, I'm sure you'll agree, the last time, that I have been asked to speak at this magnificent dinner, which has persisted since time immemorial, and which you all look forward to so much. It's a magnificent event, a great venue, great entertainment, and great food. I actually had a very interesting time during dinner, listening to Stephen Hasty, eating his. And as I looked out, I saw the same old faces who year upon year have sat and listened to literally dozens of Immortal Memories, and it is making me nervous. As I look out at you all willing me on, I now know how Elizabeth Taylor's sixth husband must have felt on the wedding night, wondering if he could match up to his predecessors. But fortunately, people like Stephen here are friendly faces. It's great to see Stephen here this evening. He's a well-known guy to a number of you, well-known in the Burns world, but for those of you who don't know him, if you see two guys standing together talking on a street corner, and one looks bored out of his skull, the other one is Stephen. Now, being the Robert Burns World Federation immediate past president, it's been a very busy period for me, with this being my sixth Burns speaking engagement up and down the country since the start of January. I've just returned from London, where on Thursday evening, for the first time, I had the pleasure of speaking at the Westminster Hemorrhoid Sufferers Society annual Burns Supper. It's the first time that I've had a standing ovation without opening a mouth. I arrived at Glasgow Central at 4:30 yesterday, 3 hours and 27 minutes late, due to a signal failure between Crewe and Preston. Ladies and gentlemen, who knew that the IT system on the West Coast Main Line is now being run by Fujitsu? Last Friday, I toasted the lassies at the Sanger Spoonerism Sufferer Society Burns Supper. After 3 years, they are still talking about Malcolm Ferguson's last visit to them. Malcolm, you certainly made an impression, and your performance must have been very humorous, because after 3 years, the Spoonerism sufferers are still referring to you as that shining wit. Come on, think about it. Last Saturday, I proposed the Immortal Memory at the New Cumnock Rubber Fetish and Bondage Club, Bondage Brunch. I'd like to take this opportunity to apologise to past President Bill Duncan. He's hearing this speech twice in 1 week. Now, as I was driving back from last night, it was quite a late night, I was listening to the BBC News app, and I saw that a body had been discovered just down the road in the River Doon. It was described as a man in his late 60s, ugly, fat, grey-haired and balding, with a saggy bum and a vacant look on his face. Ladies and gentlemen, you can imagine my utter relief when I arrived here this evening and found that Matt McCrosty is alive and well. But enough of this frivolity. Ladies and gentlemen, I am honoured to have been invited here this evening to join the veritable pantheon of illustrious Burnsians who have been given the honour of proposing the toast to the immortal memory of Robert Burns here at this club. And as I said, it is making me nervous. It's a daunting task. Early this evening, I actually started to get a feeling of imposter syndrome. And so I told Maureen Leach, an experienced Burns speaker herself, about how I was feeling. Alan, she replied, "Don't worry, you'll be great. You're a past president of the Greenock Burns Club. You're a past president of the Robert Burns World Federation. A number of the audience will be great Burnsians and members of the Federation. So think of the commonality. Stand up there, be bold, be confident, find that commonality and identify properly with your audience." Wise words indeed, Maureen. So here goes. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Alan Duncan Beck of the Robert Burns World Federation, and I too am an alcoholic. So, my task here this evening is to toast the man who is the greatest Scot of all time, Robert Burns. Now, what justification do I have for giving him that title? Well, I didn't give him that title. In fact, in 2009, the people of Scotland actually voted to bestow that title on Robert Burns. Because Burns, at a time when it was feared that Scotland was in danger of becoming no more than just a large English county. And certainly Robert Burns, more than any other Scot, became a focal point, a talisman for Scottish feeling, sentimentality, and national cultural identity, which was so necessary in helping Scots to feel an equal partner to England within the Union, giving Scots the passion to embrace the opportunities provided by the burgeoning British Empire and to go out there and to build that empire. And they did so on ships built on the River Clyde in towns like my own, like Greenock or like Port Glasgow. Port Glasgow, the only place in Scotland where you can walk along the road and see in the pavement the imprint of a dog's foot in a human shite. Port Glasgow, recently voted Scotland's most sporty town because it has more baseball bats per head of population than any other. Port Glasgow, a population of 9,711, and yet only 13 different surnames. Port Glasgow, where a young lady's favoured method of protection during sexual intercourse is a bus shelter. Port Glasgow, the town where the toothbrush was invented. Had it been invented anywhere else, it would be known as the teeth brush. And Port Glasgow, whose Latin motto, Ne Divinius Donic Valum Maranca Kirka, translates in English as laugh not until Beatical Marnock. Yes, the greatest Scot of all time is actually quite an accolade. And in fact, there's plenty of competition for that title. Ladies and gentlemen, just think about it. From the field of literature, we have Scott, Stevenson, Conan Doyle, Buchan, Ramsay, and Ferguson. From science, we have Watt, Fleming, Napier, Simpson, Baird, Bell, MacAdam, Dunlop, and Telford. And from the field of philanthropy, we must mention Dr. David Livingstone, Mary Slessor, Moffat, Mackay, and at the time, the world's richest man, Andrew Carnegie. Why, we even had the world's sexiest man for a time in Sean Connery. But I don't believe that any of these great Scots would ever argue that the title of Scotland's greatest son still belongs to Robert Burns. So what was it about Robert Burns which made him this greatest of Scots? Let's start with the letter B in Burns, which I would argue stands for benevolence, in the truest sense of the word. Benevolence is the desire to improve the lot of others. And Robert Burns undoubtedly had a real love for his fellow man, an abounding desire to promote equality throughout mankind. In a time of unprecedented political strife and revolution, his magnificent poem, A Man is a Man for All That, effortlessly distills Thomas Paine's The Rights of Man in just a few short stanzas. The poem closes with one of the most heartfelt and moving of prayers. Then let us pray that come it may, as come it will, for all that sense and worth for all the earth shall bear the green and know that for all that and know that it's come in the earth for all that man to man the world shall brothers be for all that. Now, with words like that, there is no doubt that Robert Burns had a burning desire to improve the lot of others, and that benevolence was actually one of his greatest qualities. So what about the U in Burns, the letter U? Well, to me, one of the greatest qualities that Robert Burns possessed was understanding. Burns' ability to be in sympathy with others is displayed many times throughout his works, but perhaps most perfectly in his poem To a Mouse, with the concept of the wee sleekit, cowling, timorous beastie being evicted from its home by an uncaring farmer is a metaphor for man's disregard for the planet and his fellow inhabitants. But Mousey, thou art no thy lane in proving forsakes to be vain. The best laid schemes of mice and men gang after gley, and leave us not with grief and pain for promised joy. Burns goes even further to suggest that although it may appear that man should have the upper hand, perhaps in fact it's the mouse who's happiest with his lot. Still, thou art blessed compared with me. The present only touches thee, but a backward cast my e'e on prospects drear, and forward, can I see, I guess, and fear. Ladies and gentlemen, it must take a finely honed sense of understanding coupled with a very generous portion of genius to compare in rhyme the life of a field mouse with that of a human being, and to conclude that in fact the mouse is better off. Of course, the letter R in Burns must stand for Romanticism. Burns' romantic genius can be seen in many wonderful, wonderful passages. Far too many to do the justice here. But one of my favourites is this gem, described by no less than the genius of Walter Scott as containing the essence of 1,000 love songs. Talking of Romanticism, I'm glad that this evening it's the Immortal Memory I'm proposing rather than Stephen's Toast to the Lassies. I don't really like toasting the lassies because I'm not really sure that I'm actually any good at it, or indeed qualified to toast them. Having only been married for 28 years, I don't understand women at all. And I think it's because I'm not particularly romantic myself. My wife Polly was actually saying exactly this to me and complaining the other day. She said, Alan, there's two things I cannot stick about you. Number one, you never ask about or listen to any of my thoughts or opinions. And number two, sorry. Do you know, Darrell Thompson, Darrell, stand up so we can see you. Darrell Thompson was actually saying to me exactly the same thing about the trouble that he's had in his love life over the years. He told me, it's true, He told me that at university he became famous amongst his fellow students for simultaneously dating a set of twins, neither of whom had any idea that he was actually seeing the other one. I was quite shocked. I was absolutely shocked at Darrell, and I asked him, I said, Darrell, do you ever get confused between them? He said, oh, Alan, never. He said, Sophie was blonde. Brian had a big red beard. Now, apologies, ladies and gentlemen, but I should have said earlier that it's great to see my old friend Martin Cassidy here tonight. Known, of course, as the Love Machine, because he's absolutely shite at tennis. Recently, the Avon lady called at Martin's house. He answered the door dressed in high heels, stockings, suspenders, a lacy bra, a frilly pink thong, and a long curly red wig, with his makeup and false eyelashes perfectly applied. The Avon lady said to Martin, is your wife in? Martin said, I'll take a bloody guess. Yes, romanticism is a strong theme throughout Robert Burns's works, as is the letter N, which for Burns must stand for nationalism. Now, before you start throwing things at me, nationalism, properly defined, is the devotion to the culture and the history of one's own land. It's got nothing to do with political parties. Don't let any political party tell you that they are the people who actually are the nationalists supporting this country's culture. Because that's why we're here tonight. We are all here tonight to support our country's culture. And Robert Burns was obsessed with his country's culture. And that's why I say nationalism. He had such national pride. He made a conscious decision to write the majority of his works in his national tongue, Scots. And yet he was perfectly capable of writing in English to rival the best of them, as these exquisite lines from Tam O'Shanter show. But pleasures are like poppy spread. You seize the flower, its bloom is shed. Or like the snow falls in the river, a moment white, then melts forever. Or like the borealis race that flit ere you can point their place. Or like the rainbow's lovely form, vanishing amid the storm. These lines, some of the most beautifully descriptive in the English language, are immediately followed by the broad Scots. "Nae man can tell our time nor tide. The hour approaches, Tam and ride, and off we go again into his native tongue." His poetry shows so many examples of his national pride, as can be seen in this description of the common folk from the Cotter's Saturday Night. From scenes like these. Old Scotia's grandeur springs that Maxer loved at him, revered abroad. Princes and lords are but the breath of kings. An honest man's the noblest work of God. And with this talk of God, it leads us neatly to our final letter, the letter S. And for Burns, it stands for spirituality. Here, we're dealing with Burns's conflict between his thoughts on organised religion and his commitment to the idea of a higher power. Robert Burns was a very, very spiritual man. He was a regular churchgoer, and his works are absolutely full of references to God. But he had a sharp tongue for people who he considered thought of themselves much more than they thought of God. This is evident in his poems, and especially to great effect when showing up his local clergy. He takes it to the height of sarcasm in the great satirical poem, Holy Willie's Prayer. I bless and praise thy matchless might, when thousands thou hast left in night, that I am here afore thy sight for gifts and grace, a burning and a shining light to all this place. That absolutely reeks of sarcasm. So there we have it, ladies and gentlemen. Benevolence, understanding, romanticism, nationalism, and spirituality. B-U-R-N-S. To me, that spells out the qualities of Robert Burns. Mr. Chairman, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, as the Glasgow granny said when the mantelpiece clock fell into the pram, time is on the wane. That's actually my favourite in the whole night. But I'll leave you with this. Today, Robert Burns is unique in the friendship, the affection, and the fascination that his memory inspires. Burns Night is a global phenomenon, celebrated every year with approximately 10 million people attending Burns Night celebrations just exactly like this one. Sitting together, singing together, in friendship. At the start of 2020, just before the curse of COVID lockdown affected the world, almost 3,000 Burns suppers had already taken place, stretching from Ayr to Arizona, Dundee to Dunedin, and from Shettleston to Shanghai. Robert Burns keeps adding year upon year to Scotland's fame and reputation across the globe, and a recent Scottish Government report concluded that the bard was worth £203 million per annum to the Scottish economy. That is no mean feat for a 226-year dead poet. And I would bet that that is far greater than the financial worth of Shakespeare to England. Around the world, there are more statues to Robert Burns than to any other poet, and in fact the Scottish Government claims that more statues have been erected to Burns than to almost any other non-royal and non-religious figure, and certainly more than Shakespeare. In 1791, Burns' great patron, James Cunningham, the 14th Earl of Glencairn, from just outside of Greenock in Finlayson, died suddenly. Burns, who was never one to forget a friend or a favour, penned the following perfect lines in his honour. The bridegroom may forget the bride was Mary's wedded wife yestreen. The monarch may forget the crown that on his head an hour has been. The mother may forget the child that smiles so sweetly on her knee, but I'll remember thee, Glencairn, and all that thou hast done for me. Friends of the poet, fellow Burnsians, I would hope that Scotland, in fact the world, could dare to alter that last couplet to read, but I'll remember thee, dear Burns, and all that thou hast done for me. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I now invite you to be upstanding, to charge your glasses, and to join me as I propose the greatest toast that any proud Scot could ever be afforded the honour of proposing. To the immortal memory of Robert Burns. Thank you.